Well, good morning, sleepyhead. I did not wake up to a video from you, so either you had a really good time or it was really shitty. I don't know. I'd like to see it anyways. I'm just about to study, and I think this has become an addiction for me. I look forward to your videos, and I'm kind of enjoying making them now. I'm getting out of my comfort zone. Anyways, yeah, I was talking about work camps and my imaginary friend, and I thought maybe I would tell you about my imaginary friend, and it'll kind of link some stuff together. Anyways, um, the work camp was down near my house, just down the road actually. I had to go down across the street to go down the hill, and across the road led into the bushes, and there was a little prisoner's cabin there, and not a prisoner's cabin, a guard cabin. The guard would be there. It was still there. They've taken it down now. There's just little remnants now, and that would be where the guard stood. So people visiting or whatever, people visiting, they would have to go through them. And there was another guard down the other end of the road where he stood, and there was also a little gray, weathered wood shelter for him to stand. And there was also some, I guess it was tennis courts, but they're all overgrown. So I think maybe it was for exercise or something. I'm not really sure, but I remember seeing the tennis courts there, and whether they're for prisoners or for the workers. And there was little buildings that had been broken, and all made of wood, little shacks. And there was places to tie up the boat that were in the rocks. And there were also little shackles, like little places to put shackles, and there were shackles. So I'm assuming, I don't know for sure, I'm assuming that was where they would tie up whoever was the enemy, like keep them chained, and that's what all us kids thought anyways. But yeah, my teacher, Mr. Firth, I used to call him Tiny Firth because he was a very huge, short man, and he was one of the guards there before he became a teacher. And he's since passed on years ago. But yeah, he would tell me the stories down there of it, his view, and there's a few newspaper articles with him in it too. And he was actually on Broadway when he was like 3 or 4 years old, in the original Little Rascals. I guess it would be before the little TV show came out, but that was his claim to fame. And anyways, just up the road was where my parents' house is now, and that whole property used to be a farmhouse. And I remember when my father built a garage on that place, we had to dig, and underneath where our garden used to be, this huge garden that my mom used to look after, and underneath all that was bones, and it was cow bones that were there, and there was hundreds and hundreds of bones, and there was milk magnesia, there was needle casings, like glass test tubes, stuff like that. And we're thinking, my mom, I remember, said there must have been a nurse that lived here. And in the backyard, where my dad had hung a swing from a tree for me, and there was these fern bushes and this big tree, and had an overhanging branch that my father thought would be a nice place to hang a swing. And beside the tree was some railroad ties, and it looked like maybe a pig pen. My father thought it was a pig pen anyways, and there was a big white cross in it. The cross kind of scared me because it looked like a grave marker, and I didn't really want to go down there, so my dad took the cross out, assured me nothing was in there. I don't remember him ever digging up in there, but he said, there's nothing in there. So I had to believe my dad. Whether he was just trying to console me or not, I don't know. Anyways, about my imaginary friend. I had an imaginary friend when I was at that treehouse and at that swing, and his name was Colonel John. And before, I don't remember the memories, but my mum said that I would have someone, a man in a green suit, standing in my closet when I was a kid, like maybe 3 years old. And I didn't want to go to bed at night because the man was staring at me. And I have no memory of this. But she thought that maybe I just had an overactive imagination. I have a feeling now that maybe it was him, my imaginary friend. I remember sitting down there and he talked to me about my life. He talked to me about little things, how my day was going. I used to bring what I called back then rubber cheese. It was the Kraft cheese slices. And I remember asking for 2 slices for my mom, and she'd always say, well, why do you need 2? You only need the 1. And I'm like, well, I need 1 for Colonel John. And I went down there constantly, and it was a real comfort for me, and I totally remember him. And one day when I was about 5, 6, I remember crying, and he had said something to me, and what he had said to me really scared me. And I never went down there again. My mom tried to convince me to go down, and I wouldn't. And I just know that whatever he said really, really scared me. And it wasn't until years later that I figured out what he said. It came back to me, kind of like a dream. My brother, my older brother, he's 4 years older than me, had been sexually abusing me. And I was telling him, my imaginary friend, about it. And he was trying to convince me to tell my parents. And that scared me. And it scared me because my brother was a very manipulating person. And he would tell me that my mom and dad were going to blame me. And, the typical things. And then it was my fault. And they were going to hate me. And, he manipulated me for several years. And I was afraid to tell my parents because I didn't want to lose them. And just the thought of it, well, when Colonel John was telling me to, whether he was real or not, I'll leave it up to you to decide. I still am not sure myself. I think he was. I think he was real. And I got mad at him. And I didn't want to lose my mom and dad. And I didn't want to break up the family. And so I said nothing. And my parents could never, ever convince me to go down there again alone. And my mom knew something had scared me, but she couldn't really figure out what. Anyways, back to the story. There's a woman named Ginny that was a nurse, and she lived here on the same location in the original house before it burnt. And she worked at the drugstore for years, like probably 40 years. Very old woman. And I happened to go in there one day. It wasn't my normal drugstore, but the other one was drugs. The other one was closed because it was a holiday, and I had strep throat. And I was an adult by then. I was probably 22, 23 years old. And I went in there, and she seen my name, and she noticed the address. And she said, 160 Fraser. She said, did that used to be 260 Fraser? And I said, yes, they changed the street numbers several years ago. And she said, does it have a duplex across from it? And I said, yes, it does. And then she said, well, that used to be a chicken coop. And before that, the house across the street, she goes, I think that's the one you used to live in. She said it used to be a house, a farmhouse that a nurse lived in, and she used to take in like victims of the war and that were injured, and she would help them, and usually they would just move on. And I thought that was kind of interesting. The house beside the chicken coop used to be a little gas station where people would fill up, and it used to be a dirt road when I was growing up, and they developed around it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And she said, yeah, she goes, I used to be, when I was a nurse, I used to go out there and used to help her, and she said, actually, she goes, I should have some old photos of it. So we planned a date that she would bring them in, and I would be there, and so when I went there and looked at the pictures, I'm like, oh wow, this is a chicken coop. It was converted into a house, and it was just kind of unbelievable. It was this huge barn type chicken coop that you'd never know looking at it. And then the little house beside you was indeed a gas station. And then she showed me pictures of the old house, and on it were, or in it, there was a bunch of people. One of them was the nurse that stayed there, and there was a couple pictures of Ginny herself, and there was a group of pictures that had 4 or 5 people in it, and when I looked at it, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and actually it is right now. I have goosebumps, and I recognized the man in the photo, and I knew his name, and I said, who is that man? And she said, well, that's Colonel Jonathan something or other. I didn't even hear the last name, because it was, like, I knew it was my friend. It was my imaginary friend that wasn't so imaginary in that picture. And yeah, oh God, I got goosebumps. He was there. Like, how do you explain that? He had to have been there. And it was just so unbelievable to me. And to see him, and he was wearing the same green uniform, and smiling the same, and she said, are you okay? And I didn't let on to her what seeing him meant. I just said, oh no, he just looks really familiar to me. A handsome man. And she said, yes. And she goes, he actually stayed on after the fire, and he helped out, and he actually died there. I don't know if it was tuberculosis or something, but yeah, he ended up dying there, and yeah, stayed on until he died. And yeah, so that's kind of it. That was kind of a stupid story. I don't know, I'm just rambling as usual, but I really do think he was there, and whether he was a guardian angel for me or what, but yeah, I ran away from him because he was trying to help me, and I didn't fully understand at the time, and I know he was trying to help me, but I don't know if he was buried there. My dad was just making it up that he had checked there, or if it was just his spirit that had moved, he had moved on, but maybe he'd come back when he sensed danger. I don't know. But yeah, like I say, I don't remember him, but I really do think he must have been the man that was standing in my closet in the green suit before the treehouse was built and the swing was put up. But yeah, I totally remember conversations to this day that I had with him, and I do now remember the conversation that scared me, and I blocked it in the back of my mind. And like I say, it wasn't until years later, it was kind of like a flashback of memory of me sitting there talking to him, and it was in a dream. And when I woke up, I remembered it, and I remembered the conversation that we had, and it was like all the memories had rolled back from my subconscious. So it just took an incident to trigger it, and it came back, and he was absolutely right. And I really wish that I wasn't scared of him, and had told my parents about it then. I waited until probably 2 years ago, and when my mom finally asked me, because I haven't spoken to my brother for quite some time, but that's another story in itself. My mom finally asked me, she goes, there has to be more to the story than your brother stealing from you at the store, which he did. And I had thought I had forgiven him. And when I confronted him with it, I was up in the office, and I asked him about the numbers on the page, and his margins, and the profit that he was making in the meat department, and yeah, why did I hire him? I'm a forgiving person, I guess. I thought I had forgiven him. I thought he was young, thought he had changed. Turns out he didn't. And when I confronted him with it, he pushed me, and I landed on top of my desk, and he was on top of me trying to punch me. He had anger, and I remember turning into the little girl with him on top of me, and I was screaming my head off. Kind of embarrassing. And another person in the other office came in, and they hollered for other people, and it took a few people for him to actually get off me, and they took him out. They said they were going to call the police if he didn't leave. They didn't know what had happened, but they just knew that I was horribly upset, and it was really embarrassing for me to break down in front of my employees like that. But yeah, we barely spoke. I think the first words we spoke were probably in 6 years. He came through the drive-through, and he just out of the blue spoke to me, because usually he didn't. And he's since emailed me and said, he thinks it's kind of silly that we can't speak to each other. He wanted to do a truce, and I don't think he really realizes what he did to me was so detrimental. It changed my whole aspect of life in a way. But that being said, my daughter, that's how I recognized my daughter was in trouble. And I noticed the 13-year-old girl. Before that, I knew her from the time she was probably 8 years old, and she went from this happy girl to suddenly being really dark and mysterious, and she was mad at the world, and I seen myself in her. I seen someone that was broken, and it set up alarm bells with me, because I was pretty sure I knew what it was that was happening. So I just told her that, you know, if she needed a port in the storm, that my door was open anytime. And I gave her my phone number and said, you know, yeah, I want you to call it. And she's, you know, denied it. And she's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, you know what, you don't have to. But when you're ready, know that I am here for you. And, you know, I wasn't able to save myself from what happened to me. I get emotional here, but I don't cry. Fuck, I am gonna cry. But anyways, I would let it happen to me all over again to save her, because she was worth saving. She told me at the end of the summer that she was contemplating suicide. Her one friend had recently hung himself from a tree, and she felt very alone. She had a boyfriend at the time, and she had told him the same week that she told her mom, and he kicked her to the curb. He was a couple years older than her, and he couldn't handle the sexual abuse story. And she said, you know what, if you had not been there, I would have been dead. And it was worth it for me to go through it if I could save her from any more torment. And she's actually one of the best things besides Jordan that's ever happened to me. And she's an absolutely wonderful girl. And I still don't know the full extent of what this stepfather of hers did to her. And I find out bits and pieces when she's ready to talk, but we do have that bond. And she knows about mine. And yeah. And I volunteer doing art therapy when I can, not as often as I used to, with accident victims and victims of abuse, to try to get them out of their shell. And it's so warming to see. And there was one that she had tried to kill herself, and she had learning disabilities and stuff, and I was teaching about statues, and there's a statue of David, and of course David is the one that, you know, naked, and she acted really weird. She'd be giggling hysterically, and she was just wiggling in her seat, and she was probably 26 years old, but, you know, mentality of maybe a 14-year-old, maybe 13, 14-year-old, and I could tell by the way she was acting. It bothered her. And so I told the person that was in charge, I said, you know, I think maybe something's happened to her. And I told her the reaction that she had. And so she had her social worker talk to her. And it turns out that her uncle had been sexually abusing her. And she went to her mom, and her mom didn't believe her. So it continued. And the reason she tried to kill herself was because she wanted to stop. And they got her help. And they actually arrested her uncle. She charged him. And she's doing really well now. She has someone helping her in university. She's gone to university or college. No, college. It's college she's gone to. And she just started back, and she does have someone that helps her take notes and stuff because she's dyslexic, and she's doing really well this year. And I hope that maybe I had a part of that. Maybe I don't want to say I had a huge part in it, but I hope that I had enough of a role in that transformance that maybe she'll help somebody else. Anyways, I'm all sappy today. Anyways, I gotta go. I gotta study. I don't know why I chose to tell you that, but I did. And I guess I'll talk to you later, because I gotta study and make that damn video. I'll talk to you later, Sean.